Hello, students. Welcome to week 3 of Basic English Conversation. In this video, we're going to start Unit 2. You will notice as we move throughout this semester that each unit has a similar format. There will be 4 videos for each unit that go over 2 weeks. The first video will be an introduction to the unit and vocabulary. The second video will be about the grammar. The third video will be a series called Modern English. And the fourth video will be a review video and also will cover how to use what we learn in English conversation. Today's video is the first of Unit 2, so today we're going to introduce the unit and learn some helpful vocabulary for our topic. So, let's get started. Take a look at this picture. What do you see? There are 4 people and they're pulling a sled behind them. It looks like they're somewhere very cold. But what can you notice most about this picture? Is this an old picture or a new picture? Unit 2 is called Out of the Past. In this unit, we're going to learn how to talk about the past by talking about interesting things in history and also talking about our own past. Today, let's go ahead and introduce the unit and learn 2 sets of vocabulary that will help us talk about the past. What do you know about history? I'm sure you've learned about Korean history. Have you learned anything about American history? What about German history? Are you familiar with China's very old history? How about the history of ancient Egypt? What do you know about the ancient Egyptians? First, today we're going to watch a short video that shows us a little bit of information about ancient Egyptians. Please listen carefully for how they talk about the past. And as we listen, try to answer these 2 questions in your notebook. Number 1 is a fact listening question. What did the Egyptians use to make boats? And number 2 is an opinion question. What would you like to see in Egypt? Let's go ahead and watch this interesting video about Egypt. Remember to answer the questions as you watch.
Travel like an Egyptian. The Nile. Almost 7,000 kilometers long and one of the longest rivers in the world. It runs straight through Egypt from south to north and brings life to the desert. The first people to live near and use the Nile were the ancient Egyptians. They were one of the most advanced civilizations for almost 3,000 years. They wrote beautifully in hieroglyphs and built amazing things like the pyramids and the Sphinx. They also built excellent boats to travel on the Nile. The river was perfect for traveling. When boats were traveling north, they moved with the water. When the boats were traveling south, they used the wind and a sail. The ancient Egyptians made their first boats out of a plant called papyrus. Later, they also used wood. They used simple boats for fishing and crossing the river. There were bigger boats with sails for carrying animals, plants, food, and things for sale, and for taking heavy stones for building from Aswan all the way up to the pyramids. Do you know how far that is? Almost 1,000 kilometers. The journey took about 2 weeks when the water was high and fast, but almost 2 months when the water was low and slow. On such journeys, they also loved going sightseeing. Just think, this boy and young woman lived 2,000 years ago. At that time, the pyramids were already 2,500 years old. Some visitors wrote their names on the walls. Even today, tourists use boats to explore Egypt. These modern boats look a lot like the old boats. They are called feluccas. People use them for the same things, like fishing. Boats are still a popular sight on the Nile. Would you like to travel by boat on the Nile?
Now that we have finished watching the video, let's go ahead and answer our fact-finding question. What did the Egyptians make their boats out of? Did you catch it? Right here in the video, we saw what Egyptians made their boats out of. Papyrus. So how would we put this into a sentence? We could say, they made their boats out of papyrus. Let's look a little closer at our question and answer. In our question, we see what did they make their boats out of? And in the answer, they made their boats out of papyrus. In the next video, you'll see how to use the correct grammar to talk about the past. This is just an example. Now let's go ahead and look at vocabulary that will help us talk about different events in the past. One important part of the past is the weather. When we are talking about history and things that happened in the past, talking about the weather can be an important part of the story. Let's take a look at the 8 words we're going to learn in our first vocabulary set. Please make sure you have a pen and paper. It's very helpful to write these down, and we will be using this in our offline class. So, let's take a look at these words. Cloudy, dry, foggy, humid, icy, rainy, stormy, and windy. Just like we did last week, let's look at some pictures. When you're looking at the pictures, try and guess which word the pictures represent. Okay, what do we see here? This looks like the weather is not very nice. There are a lot of clouds. And a day like this, we might want to stay inside. We don't see the sun very much. What word could we use to describe this weather? We would use the word cloudy. Cloudy means there are a lot of clouds. Often in monsoon season, it's very cloudy. Okay, this does not look like very good weather, right? It looks like there has not been rain for a very long time. There is no water. And in this kind of weather, we might even see a tumbleweed. What word would we use to talk about weather where there is no rain? We would use this word often after it's been very hot and there's been no rain, no water. This is dry weather. For example, often the desert is very dry. All right, what do we see here? These are not clouds. This is what happens after it rains or early in the morning when water is coming off of those trees and plants and going up, up, up. It might even be hard to see when we have weather like this. Can you guess? This is foggy weather. For example, after a big rainstorm, it is very foggy in Masan. Okay, this next word is something we might think of when we think of a jungle. It's very hot and it feels like there's a lot of water in the air. It can feel like this in summer very often. The word we would use to describe this kind of weather is humid. And this means there's a lot of moisture in the air. Do you like humid weather? I definitely do not. Ooh, brr. This makes me think of winter. So we see this might happen after it rains in winter, or maybe the snow starts to melt. If there's a lot of this on the ground, you might slip and have a hard time walking. When weather is like this, we would call it icy weather. When the weather is icy, you should wear very good shoes so you don't fall down, especially here at Gyeongnam-dae, where there are many hills. Next is one of my favorite kinds of weather. So this kind of weather happens very often, and it is something that many of us might feel cozy about. We get to stay inside, maybe read a book and have a cup of tea. This is called rainy weather. Do you like rainy days? What do we see here in this picture? This is more than just a rainy day. Here we see lightning, there's probably thunder. This is a big storm, right? We might see many lightning flashes. When the weather is like this, do you know what we call it? This is called stormy weather. In summertime, there's often a lot of stormy weather. Okay, this is our last weather word. What is happening in this picture? We see the trees are being blown back by something. On a day like this, you might want to be careful or you'll go flying away. This is called windy weather. So when there's a lot of wind, it's windy. Often it's windy right before a storm, right? Let's review our 8 vocabulary words from vocabulary set number 1. Cloudy, dry, foggy, humid, icy, rainy, stormy, and windy. There are 6 words from our vocabulary set that have something in common. What do you notice about these words? Cloudy, foggy, icy, rainy, stormy, and windy. What is the same in all 6 of these words? All of them end in Y. Let's talk about what that means and why it's important. A word ending like this is called a suffix. So let's talk about the Y suffix. When we end words with the Y suffix, it turns them into adjectives. Often we use this to turn nouns into adjectives. When we add Y, this suffix means having the quality of. Let's look at a few examples and see if we can determine what they mean. Rainy. Here we see we turned the noun rain into an adjective, rainy. It is rainy. This means that the weather has the quality of having a lot of rain. So we'd say it's rainy. Snowy. This was not one of our words, but we can probably guess what it means because it ends in Y, right? So we took that noun snow and changed it into an adjective. In winter, it's so snowy. This means the weather in winter has the quality of having a lot of snow. Sunny. a word we all know, and we can totally guess what it means because here we see we have our Y, and we turned the noun sun into an adjective. In summertime, I love the sunny weather. This means the weather has the quality of having a lot of sun. Let's look at some non-weather words with this Y suffix. Juicy. So here we see we took the noun juice and we added Y to it to turn it into an adjective. So this word means it's something that has a lot of juice. For example, I could say the orange is so juicy. And our last example is the word messy. So here we took the noun mess and ended it with a Y. This means that something has the quality of not being organized and there's a lot of mess. For example, I could say my younger brother's room is often messy. So like this, when we take a noun and we add Y to the end, we turn it into a descriptive adjective. And we see this a lot with weather, but it can also be used with other words. Let's get some practice using our weather vocabulary words. Let's answer this question. What is the weather like in the photos? Number 1 is already done for us. We see the weather in number 1 is dry, hot, and sunny. And we see those words are crossed out over here, so we can't use them again. Let's take a look at number 2. What words would you use to describe the weather in number 2? Does it look very warm? Does it look cloudy? We can see a lot of snow in that picture, so we might use the word snowy. And it also does not look very warm, so we could use the word cold. The weather in picture number 2 is cold and snowy. How about in number 3? What word could we use to describe this weather? We see that there's a lot of wind and there are many clouds in the sky. So we could say that it is cloudy and windy. How about in number 4? What's all this that we see in this picture? It's not rain and it's not ice. The weather in number 4 is foggy. Finally, let's take a look at number 5. What is happening in this picture? We can see people have umbrellas and we can see there's a lot of rain on the ground. The weather in picture number 5 looks rainy and wet. Now let's listen and check our answers.
Unit 2, Track 1. 1.
Dry, hot and sunny.
2.
Cold and snowy.
3.
Cloudy and windy.
4.
Foggy.
5.
Rainy and wet. The word
Okay, now let's see if we can fill in the blank with the correct kind of picture. You'll notice in our 3 examples that we're talking in the past tense. So we're talking about what the weather was like. Let's look at number 1. Last weekend it was really... We're going to use 2 words to describe what we see in this picture. How would you describe it? If I were looking at this picture, I would say it looks very rainy and stormy. There's a lot of rain and we see lightning in the sky, so it's rainy and stormy. So our sentence is, Last weekend, it was really rainy and stormy. Let's look at number 2. Here we see a picture of what we think the Earth looked like about 2.5 million years ago, a very long time ago. That's when the last ice age was. So if we take a look at this picture, we can see it does not look very warm. So what kind of words from our vocabulary could we use to describe weather in the Ice Age? We could say, in the Ice Age, the weather was... Let's try to use 3 words. What 3 words do you think could describe weather in the Ice Age? How about cold, icy, and snowy? I don't know about you, but I would not want to live in this time. Let's take a look at our next example. Here in number 3, we see a city in Korea. Daegu is a very city. When we look at the picture, we can see that it looks like there are some fake eggs frying on the sidewalk and some traffic cones that are melting. If you have ever been to Daegu, you know it is very... What are 2 words we could use to describe the weather in Daegu? We could say, it is a very hot and humid city. Daegu definitely earned the name Daeprika, don't you think? It is very hot there. Weather is one thing that we can use to talk about events in the past, but it's not the only thing. When you think of the past, maybe you think of the people, but what else might you think of? And what else might you talk about when you're talking about long ago? What do we see in this picture? Does this look like something from nowadays? Probably not, right? This looks very old. Here we see some old pottery. Can you guess what that was? How about that? Next, let's learn vocabulary to talk about useful objects. When we're talking about the past, and especially talking about a very long time ago, it's helpful to know vocabulary about the kind of objects that were used in those times too. So let's take a look at vocabulary set number 2. Let's take a look at 8 helpful vocabulary words we can use to talk about useful objects. Bowl, comb, hairbrush, knife, mirror, pillow, plate, and scissors. You may recognize some of these words, and if you do, then you can just think of this as some review. But if there are words that are new to you, please pay special attention. And again, remember to write them down in your notebook, okay? Here we go. Just like before, I'm going to show you some pictures and see if you can guess the English word we would use to describe that image. Here is a picture of what this item might have looked like a long time ago. This item hasn't changed that much and really looks the same today, though it might be made out of different material. This is called a bowl. Bowl. This is something we use almost every day, right? Let's take a look at our next word. All right, remember this picture? Can you guess what this is? What do you think it was used for? I'll give you a hint. Here's what one would look like today. This is called a comb. Notice that a comb is very thin and has what we call teeth, right? Many teeth on it. It's different than what we're going to see in our next word. Here is an ancient one of these. We see it looks very old. There are holes in there and there are some things sticking out of them. Can you guess by looking at it what it is? Here's what one would look like today. We do not call this a comb. This is a hairbrush. and it's something we can see all throughout human history. Let's look at our next word. Yes, another object that has not changed very much in our history. And here's what they might look like today if you are a chef. This is a knife. Of course, when we have a K at the beginning of a word, like this, and then a consonant, the K is silent. So this word is simply pronounced knife. Here is another picture we saw a few slides ago. Could you guess what this was? It's very old, so it might be difficult to tell what it used to be used for. And here's a hint. It's something we use to check our appearance. This is a mirror. Mirror. This word might be a little hard to say because we have a lot of R sounds in this word. So please listen and repeat after me. Mirror. Mirror. Don't worry, we'll keep practicing that one in class. Okay, our next word. So this is what this object used to look like, and this is what they look like today. Seeing this picture makes me feel like this guy. I'm very glad we do not sleep on what look to be very uncomfortable stands. So what are these? These are pillows. And of course, I bet you're very happy too that we have nice soft pillows to use today. On to our next word. Okay, so what do we see in this picture? This is also something we eat off of. As you can see by these pictures, a lot of things don't look very different now than they did a long time ago. Isn't that interesting? Many of our needs are the same today as they were thousands of years ago. So, do you know the name of this item? This is an item that we might feel, oh, so sad when we see many of them in the sink and we have to wash them. This is a plate. Plate. Okay, let's take a look at our last word. So I'm going to show you a picture and I want you to guess what modern day object it is. Okay, there we go. What does that look like? It looks a little strange, doesn't it? Can you guess what this was used for? Let's take a look at what these look like today. Da 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 da. Scissors. So let's say it together. Scissors. The S in scissors sounds like a Z. Scissors. Okay, everyone, let's continue. As a review, here are the 8 vocabulary words from Vocabulary Set 2. Bowl, comb, hairbrush, knife, mirror, pillow, plate, and scissors. Now let's practice with Vocabulary Set 2. Okay, so here is a description of the object. I want you to guess which object I'm describing. Number 1. I use it every morning when I get ready. I look in it to check my appearance. So which object is this? This is a mirror. This is what we look in to check our appearance. Let's go to number 2. This is what people eat soup out of. You can also use them for cereal, ice cream, and noodles. So what is something we eat out of that we can eat soup and ice cream and noodles out of? It's a bowl. And number 3, it is like a hairbrush, but small, thin, and often made of plastic. So it's something we still use on our hair, but not a hairbrush. It is small, thin, and plastic. Do you remember what these are called? These are combs. Okay, everyone, that's it for our introduction to Unit 2 and an introduction to Unit 2's vocabulary. Please check eClass for assignments. In the next video, you will learn about the important grammar in Unit 2 and continue to learn how to talk about the past. See you next time.